stats, you discuss the descriptive stat, you discuss the graph, and basically all the information that you got. And also tell us whether, in the results section, you tell us whether your hypothesis based on the result, based on the statistics, whether your hypothesis got accepted or not. Then finally, you come to the discussion section. This is where it's kind of like an open-ended section. And this is where you talk about the limitation that you face during your research, the do's and the don'ts, a suggestion for the future researcher. Also, you tell them about if any sort of extraneous variables that came into play, things that they should do, things that they shouldn't do, etc. If they want to do a research with extension, what they should do. So everything that you want to talk about, it's basically we say it in the discussion section. So every research report that you will write, these are the things, any APA format research report, these will be the sections that you need to have in your report. Okay, are you with me?
Yes, miss.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes,
Again,
ma'am.
this is just an outline of the research. We will have our own APA class for research, for the report writing. Before you have to write the draft, we will have a class on that. So don't worry. Now, as I mentioned, that there are a few rules that we need to follow in a psychological experiment. Now, APA, which stands for American Psychological Association, they actually put a set of guidelines for the researcher if they want to do any sort of psychological research. Now, before APA came into play, researcher actually used different techniques and different ways to do a research. And sometimes it harmed the participant, and it kind of traumatized them, which had a longer impact. So after that, when APA came into play, APA was like, no matter what type of research you want to do, no matter how important that is, you're not supposed to do certain things with your participant. Because in a psychological experiment, most of the time what we do, we work with human being or living beings, and you're not supposed to do anything that will harm them. Okay, so APA gave us guideline. They gave us guideline to maintain during conduction. They gave us guideline to maintain while writing a report. If you want an approval, if you want to publish your study, you have to maintain these guidelines. And all of you in this class, since you have to do a psychological experiment and testing, all of you also have to follow this guideline. If you don't, you won't pass the conduction. Okay. So the very first one that you need to do is do no harm. You have to make sure you're not harming your participant in any way. That's the first thing. Then describe risk accurately to potential participants. So sometimes there are some risk factors in the while you were doing the conduction. So you have to make sure you describe them. If that's something risky for them, they would know in the beginning. They might say no later, which is fine, but you have to let them know. Then ensure that participation is voluntary. So you have to make sure while you're inviting them for participating in your study, the participation needs to be voluntary. You cannot and you should never force them. Sometimes I've seen students, they're getting their friends by saying, oh, you're my friend, you have to do it for me. No, don't do it. If they really want to do it, you just invite them. But the participation needs to be voluntary. You're not supposed to push them or force them of any sort. Then minimize any discomfort to participant. You have to make sure that the lab setting or any setting that you're using for your conduction, it has it's comfortable for your participant. Any sort of discomfort, you have to minimize it. Maybe you won't be able to do it 100%, but it needs to be at least 99%. Maintain confidentiality. Now, while you working with them, there might be a lot of information, those are confidential. Okay, and you have to make sure that you are keeping everything within the lab. Do not invade. It comes with the next point. Do not invade privacy unnecessarily. If it's not required, don't do it. If you do it, if you know any information that is very personal or confidential, keep it to yourself. You're not supposed to use it in any other purpose. Then use deception only when absolutely necessary. Some experiments requires deception, but it's usually our last resort to use it. When it's absolutely necessary, this is when you're gonna use it. Other than that, don't. Remove any misconceptions caused by deception. That is debriefing. If you really have to use deception, after you are done with your experiment, you have to do a debrief session, meaning you have to remove any sort of misconception caused by that deception. You have to tell them that okay, that was just a deception. That's not real. Okay. If you don't do that, what will happen is sometimes they take it by heart. They just actually think something like that happened, and it might uh, traumatize them or change their mood or have an impact on them. So that's not supposed to be done. So you have to make sure you remove any sort of misconception that caused by the deception that you used. Then provide results and interpretation to participants. So what we do usually after we are done with the conduction, we ask our participant whether they want to know the result or not. Most of the time they say yes. Sometimes they say no, they're not interested, which is fine. But if they say that yes, they want to know, uh, we send them. So we let them know that after the analysis, we will send them the data. And then after you're done with your analysis, you have the result, you send the information to your participant. They should know. Then last but not the least, treat participants with dignity and respect. So you have to make sure you have to keep that in mind that the participant that you're using, they're doing you a favor. And you have to make sure you respect them. Okay? So you have to treat them with respect. And one thing is if in the middle of the way they say no or anything happened, they just don't want to do it, respect it. So these are the first 10 most important ethical guidelines that we need to follow while conducting an experiment. And all of you guys, since all of you will be working with the participant that you will be bringing during your conduction class, you have to make sure you're following the guidelines as well. Are we clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Clear.
miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now, this is the flow chart of everything that I just talked about. All right. So this is basically what a scientific method looks like, and this is exactly what we need to do. Now, before doing the conduction, we will have a demonstration class where I will show you the steps and how to actually conduct an experiment step by step. So you will see how exactly these steps fall into play while we do an experiment. But basically, this is kind of like a blueprint of any research that you want to do that follows scientific method. You have to make an observation, you have to define the problem, you propose a hypothesis, and then you go ahead and try to gather evidence for that. So you got it? You got what scientific method is?
Yes, miss.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, miss.
Yes? Okay, good. Now, what I want you to do is take 5 minutes, all right? And then think about one experiment that you want to do. Think about one problem that you're trying to figure out the cause of the problem. Anything, it doesn't have to be psychological. Think about anything in your life, anything that you saw maybe today or yesterday or last month, any sort of problem, any sort of observation you made, and you define that problem, you try to propose a hypothesis on that problem. So take 5 minutes and think about it. And then I want to know from every single one of you.
Miss,
Yes.
Miss, my network was breaking, so I just missed out your last two or three words. Just what we have to think for 5 minutes. Miss, can you just repeat?
Sure. Just think about any sort of observation you made, and there was a problem that you detected, and any hypothesis you want to propose to figure out the cause of the
Oh, okay,
problem.
miss. Okay, miss.
ম্যাম,
Yes.
আপনি যে হাইপোথিসিসটার কথা বলছেন যে আমরা এখন একটা প্রবলেম চিন্তা করব সেটা সম্পর্কে হাইপোথিসিস বলবো, এটা কি প্রবলেমটা কি জন্য হয় এই জন্য হাইপোথিসিসটা বলবো নাকি সলভটার জন্য?
প্রবলেমটার কজটা কি? হোয়াট ইজ দ্য কজ অফ দ্য প্রবলেম? তোমার কাছে কি লাগে?
ওকে ম্যাম।
Okay, who want to share?
Miss, can I
Miss,
try?
Okay, one person at a time. Whoever want to go first, go ahead.
Miss, actually, it's not a psychological problem, but I think I can connect with the scientific methods. Yesterday, I was observing that my PC is making noises. My computer is making noises. It shouldn't be. Then I tried to find out that was the problem. Then I opened and I checked everything and find out that the CPU cooler is jammed and it needs to be relocated. then I fixed the problem. If I connect and with the scientific method, when I was observing the whole situation, it is the observational phase, and I defined the problem as it is making noises. I proposed an hypothesis while I was assuming that it might be the casing fans, and I gathered evidence by opening and checking what's wrong with it, and then I fixed and supported my hypothesis that yes, it is the CPU cooler, and I relocated the and solved the situation. So that's about it. It's not a it's not a psychological test, but I think it's relevant with the scientific method.
Yes, perfectly. Perfectly. Thank you so much, Sakib.
Nice. Thank you.
Good. Exactly. That's he actually followed every single step while he did that, solve that problem, to be honest, if you look at it closely. That's exactly what you do. So it doesn't have to be, see, this doesn't have to be psychological. Any problem, if you follow the scientific method, it's the same steps that we follow. Okay, who else want to try?
Miss,
Yes,
yeah.
Vithi, go ahead.
So the observation I made is that my mother was sort of annoyed today. She
Mhm.
wasn't she wasn't behaving as her usual self. So I observed that the days I wake up late and miss breakfast before attending classes, she is in a bad mood. So I
Hmm.
define the problem as she gets in a define the problem as she is in a bad mood, and I make a hypothesis that she has a bad mood whenever I miss breakfast before attending classes. So I
Okay,
gather
all right.
the evidence, and by seeing a few days, and then I
Mm-hmm.
test my hypothesis.
Okay, good. Thank you, Vithi. Who else want to try?
Miss,
Miss,
can I?
I have an
Okay, Faiza, then Muslima.
Okay, Miss. Miss, it's like when I was traveling to Dhaka to Chittagong, I was watching my oil tank that it was full from Dhaka. But when I reached to Chittagong, it was still full. So that time I made an observation that the oil tank or the tank meter was not being able to work or think, because I was thinking that I can't reach to 232 kilometers with a one with a full tank from Dhaka to Chittagong. So I was making an observation by the full. When I watched the oil tank, I was making observation that it's okay. How could it be possible? Then I thought that it is a problem. So that then I define a problem that maybe it is broken or it has some problem or issue with that oil tank or the meter. Then I proposed the hypothesis to my family members that it must be have been some problem because it's not be possible. But the my husband and others are telling me that no, it's a this car is a good is in good position and it's a hybrid car, so it might be not be any kind of problem, so you should not make this hypothesis. So I make an hypothesis that no, it's not working, so it is a problem. But after that, when we pass few more miles and kilometers, like, then I saw that no, the all meter is in then I saw the full, it's not full, it's like 1 meter, one point something, or it's been uh, down and not it's full. So then I thought that no, when I made the hypothesis that it's like I made a decision, or I thought that it is a problem, it's not a problem. So my hypothesis got rejected, but
Mhm.
others are right. So miss it, I think that it is a scientific method of a problem, or this thing.
Okay, thank you. Right, exactly. Thank you. Muslima.
So, Miss, I'm actually done with Alhamdulillah 37 courses in NSU. So most of them I had to do group projects. So my teammates wouldn't. I had an observation that my teammates um, won't work well, and most of them would actually avoid working on the project. So, but there were some teachers who would actually ask us to provide the um, contribution table, and whenever they would do so, the students would actually work on it. So that was the problem, like they won't want to work on it. So I made a hypothesis that they only work when the contribution table is being asked by the teacher, because the teacher because they would feel that they would get caught by the teacher, as they would have the actual data that who is working and who isn't working. Then I gathered some evidence from by working with them under uh, all types of faculty members who would ask for the contribution table and who wouldn't ask for the contribution table. And then I derived that my hypothesis is correct.
Nice. Good. Okay.
Thank you,
Who
Miss.
else?
Miss, can I go?
Sure.
Miss, recently I have observed that some of the keys in my keyboard have not been functioning properly, and therefore I have to like press the keys twice and thrice, and so that is the problem. And basically, after like looking back, and I've noticed and gathered evidence that water had fell on my keyboard like for a month before, and which
Mhm.
caused this problem. And I like opened the keyboard and saw checked everything, and yeah.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. All right. Thank you. Next person.
May I, ma'am?
Sure.
Ma'am, I observe. I have a Persian cat, so I observe her that she was shouting and running here and there. So I observe her 2 or 3 days, and then but her shouting is not low. So I get her to the vet and asked the vet what is the problem. Then he told me that she is in heat. That's why she was shouting. I have not experienced enough. Then that's why I didn't observe it properly.
Okay. Okay. All right. Who else?
Yes, ma'am. Can I start?
Yes, please.
So I observed for a few days that I was getting headaches a lot as soon as I woke up in the morning. And
Mhm.
so the problem I found out is that I was getting very frequent headaches, and I use laptop every night. And my hypothesis was that I use the laptop every night, but every time I felt that I was using it very late night for about like after 2 a.m. I used to get the headache in the morning. So I started to gather evidence like I for a few days I was using the laptop after 2 a.m. and some other days I was using it not after 2 a.m. I used to close it down before. And I realized that I didn't get the headaches the days I didn't use the laptop so late night. So yeah, that way my hypothesis was proven.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you. Who's next? You all have to go, so sooner the better. Anything, anything.
Ma'am, can I start?
Yes, sure, Rakibo.
I observed that sometimes stress helps me to work more, and the problem is without stress, I cannot get interest to work more.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
Ma'am, hypothesis is sometimes stress are good for our life because it can help me to move forward for my career. Some days ago, when I did lots of assignment in my last semester, I felt that my hypothesis is true.
So your stress makes you productive.
Yes, ma'am.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Next person.
Miss, I would like to try.
Yes, sure.
Miss, I have observed that, like, I'm a I'm an obedient student. I will call myself an obedient student. Like, I attend the classes regularly. I do take down notes. I participate in classes. But when it comes to sitting for exams or class tests, I have seen that my marks are not that good. I don't perform well in my exams. So I feel that I I become nervous or I become tense, and that distracts me from performing well during my exams, even though I perform well during the regular lectures. So, Miss, I'm a bit confused or lost. I don't know how to put down this information. Can you please help
You're
me?
cutting off a little. Can you repeat the last few sentences?
Miss, what I said was that although I perform well during my regular lectures, I don't perform that good